That's incredible. I mean, I feel like
Yeah.
that's the perfect example of why there needs to be an array of opinions and perspectives in a room to make great decisions. Before we get
Awesome.
started, tell me a little bit about who you are, your name, current company, position, and anything like fun that you want to add in there.
Yes, name is Sarah or Sarah Jane, depending where you found me in my career. A lot of people refer to me as SJ, so it can be confusing. I am currently based in San Francisco. As you can hear from my accent, I'm Australian. I've been in the States since the beginning of 2012, and I'm also a US citizen now, which I think is cool. That's not my cool fact, though. My cool fact is that I have a cat named Dragon, and he was previously toilet trained before we moved house. So I have videos of him using a toilet. But back to my career, I'm currently working at Ingenio, which is a collective of spiritual wellness websites. I lead marketing across Keen.com, which is the world's largest psychic advisor marketplace, and Astrology.com and Horoscope.com, which are pretty prolific websites. Previous roles, marketing, brand marketing, digital marketing, a stint in software, and that's how I ended up here today.
That's amazing. I was going to say you've led kind of brand lifecycle creative at global like places like Nike and Bell, and now you're at Keen and Ingenio. What initially drew you to marketing, and what's kind of kept you in that realm?
The first half of my career, actually, I wasn't in straight marketing. I was in the wider network of marketing, I'd say. I
Mhm.
actually started out, I studied journalism. I was a writer. Fun fact, I am published in a Taschen book. I did a lot of sneaker writing. Yeah, yep, I've got some published stories. So I studied writing. I worked actually for a marketing trade magazine in Australia called B&T. And that was my first job. I was still in university at the time. And then, an editor I was working with said to me, get out of writing. It's going to change with the internet. Go into agencies or go into media or go into the bigger world of marketing and just, you're going to have a better time. It was probably quite good advice. So I worked in agencies in the beginning. I worked in a media agency. I worked in very early internet in Australia at MTV when we had like 35,000 users, and that was big. This was like 2008. So the beginning of my career was really, really media heavy and, digital media heavy. And then Nike was really my first foray into digital marketing. And I think that from that point, the culmination of working on the other side, being a vendor or being in an agency, really had given me a different perspective to how to approach marketing. But then also, I had this writing background where I had been a sneaker writer. So it sort of married together and made sense. I wish I could say like it was a super deliberate move that I like was like, I'm going to work in marketing and I'm going to do this. That's not how I operate. I kind of see what the universe hands me and go with it. So I think what's kept me in marketing is the ever evolving challenges of the job is just never done. And if anyone thinks the job's done, then it's not.
Yes.
It's just not. So I think the creative challenge, I think marketing has a really good balance of sort of business and creative, which is where I find myself. Being able to work in kind of small, nimble, multifunctional teams suits my background. It kind of suits where I am right now. Yeah, that's what attracted me
That's
or
awesome.
got me into it and has attracted me to stay. Yeah.
I love that. I feel like there's a section of people who are like in school, they're like, I want to do marketing, and they do that. But then everyone else kind of has this like windy road into how they got there from creative or whatever. And I love that. I'm the same way. So I think that's super cool. Was there, if you look back at your whole career, was there like a defining moment that really shaped how you lead your teams today?
I'd say there was just a couple of leaders that I had. that were really influential in how I have created my style of leadership. And there was a couple of leaders at Nike. Give a shout out to my friend Alex, who was my boss for a while. Hi, Alex. Someone else that I sort of worked adjacent to at Nike that was really, really strong, and someone in my really early career as well. And I think what I found from them was this ability to kind of be empathetic and meet people where they're at on your team. So really, like, meet your team where they're at. You gently need to push people to places that they're not at, but you've got to meet them where they're at in the beginning.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not going to work. And I think especially when you are inheriting teams or taking over from someone else, you have to be really empathetic to that. I really tried to lead with empathy and meeting people where they're at, but also this idea of like excited creativity. Really try and keep the excitement in it of like, well, we have this tricky situation, but like actually it's really exciting because we could do something really cool or really different. So I think that is very much my leadership style, and it's very much come from just picking up pieces over the years and really thinking back and remembering how it made me feel and how it was really nice and how it really coached me in a gentle way, I'd say. Yeah.
That's amazing. I had like the opposite. I had a really bad interaction with someone. It was not like a boss at the time, but and I vowed, I was like, I will never make anyone feel that way. And so I lead similarly, but from a totally like different standpoint. So that's
Well, I can tell you I definitely had some bad ones, but
yeah. I feel like
the
everyone.
bad ones that I had, I just don't want them to ever think that they've had any impact on me moving
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah. I love that. Don't give them any credit for anything.
Nope,
Absolutely. Yeah.
absolutely not.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna move kind of into like project strategic
Yeah,
insights. So at Nike, you led Air Max globally. Is that correct?
that was one of my roles. Yeah.
You worked on, strategies for, was it the APLA market? And
So
tell me
started
about.
in global. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a crazy one because I started in global. I was the global brand director for Air Max and sitting in the sportswear team. And we'd really been given this opportunity to really rethink Air Max. Having been a sneaker rider, 20 years ago more, and really wearing a lot of Air Max as a young person in my teenage years, in my early 20s, I had a really strong affinity for the brand. And I felt at the time that Air Max had just sort of taken this turn to really get away from its roots. So we've given this really exciting opportunity to reposition Air Max for a younger generation. We were sort of faced with this challenge of like younger people thinking that Air Max was their dad's shoe, which realistically at this age, like, yeah, okay, we get it. It is your dad's shoe. So we needed to make Air Max feel like it was for the kids.
Mhm.
Um, the issue, great strategy, great plan that I can tell you all about. The issue is then that COVID popped up. You might have heard of it. Happened in 2020. Yeah, that one. So a lot of what we had created didn't actually get released at the time or didn't happen in the way it was supposed to happen. A lot of it did actually happen in 2021, slightly changed, but it did come out later on. What we had really realized, and it's kind of one of my favorite strategies, was this idea of Air Max Day is a fake Nike holiday that's on the March 26th every year, and it's supposed to be a day for the culture and a day for the kids and a day to celebrate Air Max. The interesting thing was that on Air Max Day every year in these key cities, the local Nike offices would put on cultural moments or events or parties or, what was everyone's strategy for that year. But the way we'd flipped it and the way I really thought about it was this idea of, well, if it's a day for the kids, let the kids choose what they want to do. Stop having a bunch of like middle-aged Nike folk in an office decide what is relevant for the kids that year. So we have all of these like great youth partners in these cities. Ask them what they want to do. Make it their Air Max Day. Give them the keys. Give them the dollars. And so that was the strategy, was this idea of Air Max Day your way. And it was the kids were leading it. COVID, of course, March 26th, like peak time for it. We did put out a digital zine that year, though, which ended up being a very good last minute deploy. There's a digital zine that we worked on that was sort of like a downloadable zine where you could, pop in thoughts and kind of express your creativity, which was quite good. And then the other large component really was the creative aspect of it, which was Air Max had never been as a campaign season, which is from basically January to March every year for Nike, had never been led by an all-female lineup on the creative side. So we put in a female or female LGBT identifying as leadership on that. So our cover was Rosalia. We also had Naomi Osaka, and then we had Leo. I forget their last name. Leo, the skateboarder. I'm going to have to come back to that. I apologize. So we had this amazing all-female lineup, which was just awesome from a positioning standpoint. And then creatively, it was sort of, really youthful, and it was also really raw and really honest. And it was a big change from where Nike had been in the previous years, which had been very kind of space age and dark. And we completely flipped it and said, well, if you look back at 1987, you look where the street culture of Air Max came from, you look at everyone that was wearing it in the 80s, it was a very raw, very honest, very genuine time. We need to go back to that. And so that's how we ended up with our key figures. Leo Baker is the name. I knew I would remember. So yeah, Rosalia, Naomi Osaka, and Leo Baker, and that was our lineup. It was really completely different to anything that had been done, and I think the beauty of what we created, which was this idea of the future is in the air, which was the concept, ended up being turned into an ongoing creative concept for Air Max. It was actually the first one. So Nike had always worked on a seasonal or yearly, and then they moved to these more longer-term creative concepts, and the future is in the air for Air Max was the first one. So that's
That's
cool.
amazing. Wow. That is so cool. My next question was there across, doesn't have to be Nike, could be Nike, but maybe it is this Air Max one, but is there a project that you're like especially proud of? And I'm curious like what it taught you about like business growth and marketing kind of like coming together.
It is an interesting one because I think what you find at Nike is that you work in such silos that business growth and marketing don't always
Mm-hmm.
intersect for you. You're in your matrix, you're in your silo, you don't really see it. I think a good example would be when I was at Bell Helmets and we were coming out with our first gravel helmet. So Gravel CX, which is sort of a cross between a mountain bike helmet and a road helmet. And it was our first foray into the space. It's an exciting new style, of riding, but a burgeoning area of riding for people. You can do more on a gravel bike because you can ride road and you can sort of ride a little bit of dirt as well. So the proposition that we had for the helmet, which was really interesting and really went against sort of how you think about helmets, was this idea of one helmet for multiple rides. Because in the past, it would always be you need a different helmet for your different styles of riding. But Gravel CX just blends these areas. And so it's really interesting to go out and be like, you could just have one helmet and you could go on a trip and you could just take the one helmet and you could ride multiple different styles and you would be protected. And that ended up having a really interesting business impact. The campaign went really well. The helmet sold really well. It sort of opened up a bigger category for Bell at the time. To really sort of have a bit more ownership over something that was burgeoning in the market. And I think internally as well to get us thinking about the idea of sort of being less, I'd say, part of the repositioning of Bell that I was doing at the time was this idea that Bell is the helmet for everyone. Everyone has worn a Bell. You might have had one from Walmart when you were a kid. Now you can buy a $200 one at a bike store. But it's this idea of accessibility. Like Bell is an accessible brand that should be accessible to everyone. And Bell had kind of lost that over the years. It had gotten into these kind of niche spaces and said, well, you've got to be like a hardcore motorcyclist or be a hardcore bike rider. And it's sort of forgotten its roots and where it had come from, which is that it's a very accessible for everybody brand. And so by doing this positioning with the XR Spherical, which is this gravel helmet, it really opened up that idea again of like, oh, Bell is for everyone. You don't have to have 50 helmets. The elite people will, but not your everyday person. And so we saw a really good business impact there. And the marketing was just like a whole new expression for Bell. We sort of crossed over a launch video into a tech video that had never been done before. It's actually it's one of my favorite like sort of things that we worked on at Bell. It's a really beautiful video with a great voiceover from one of the guys that was on the engineering team. It's
That's
this
so cool.
beautiful, relaxing British accent. But we trialed a bunch of new things and they worked. And it was impactful, I think. In a smaller company like that, you definitely get more access to the impact. And it's more immediate as well.
Totally. I always find like the sweet spot for me is like the mid-sized company where you can like see the impact, but you have enough support to like get things going as
Yes.
well. Yeah, there's a sweet spot in there. I feel like for people who I like to have hands-on marketing, like I like to have the strategy and then I like to see the team kind of be able to make it come to fruition. So,
Yeah.
yeah, totally.
Same.
Um,
Mid-size is great.
yes. Okay, so in your current role, you said you're across astrology, horoscope.com, and Keen. What are the
Hmm.
biggest challenges in lifecycle marketing for in digital that you've kind of seen in the last, we'll say 12 months?
Yeah. I mean, I think straight up is, the issue that everybody has that is just the constant abundance and just throwing advertising and emails at people's faces. I mean, it's just everywhere you go. So I think the biggest challenge that everybody has is the attention span and being able to cut through. That's like kind of number one. Number two is the economic climate. Because, when you're relying on people spending money, we're having a time. Fortunately, none of our products come under any tariffs because we're a marketplace for services. We're not goods. So that's fortunate. But what I think has been something that's like not talked about, but is just kind of challenging is the way that Google have redone their inboxes because now that everybody has a promotional inbox, it's completely changed the amount. It doesn't matter how small the groups are that you're sending to. You might be delivering, but people aren't seeing them anymore if they're not in that priority section of the Gmail inbox. And that's a huge chunk of people. So I would just say that like from a back end like dorky thing, that one's massive. I think then is just really there because of the climate we're in. People are very focused on pricing and promos and offers. Like we live in a society where you can be checking out from a store and then you go and Google and find yourself a code for free shipping. So that becomes really challenging. I think what we have an opportunity to do at Keen is to be more transparent around that we are a marketplace, that our advisors set their own pricing, that's why promos and offers are a part of what we do, but not an overly abundant part of what we do. So I would say that sort of all of these pieces just make retention challenging, and you have to just be continuing to evolve, and really, I think, really think beyond marketing and think beyond your product and why are people buying it or not, and really like look at the bigger picture. Because if I think about someone spending $50 with us, it's not that $50 is necessarily going to go to one of the competitive spiritual marketplaces. That $50 might go to yoga. That $50 might go to a Reiki session. That $50 might go to acupuncture. There's all of these different things within this idea of sort of wellness and self-help where that money could be going. And that's really interesting when you start thinking about your competitors being bigger than just your actual competitors, because that's really assuming that someone's always at the bottom of the funnel, and really thinking about purchase consideration and how someone's choosing to decide that they want to get help for their issues and where that money might go.
Totally. I was Yes, I agree with that 100%. I was looking at some like 2008, 2007 recession data, and it was so interesting how people reclassified what was a luxury, a necessity, like all of those things during that recession. And it will be very interesting to see how people react now. And like to your point, your competitors expand almost the in the marketing world when you have this economic volatility. People are not just like, do I buy this version or this version? It's, do I buy this thing or this totally different thing in the same area? So, yeah, I think you're spot on. It will be interesting to see how people, we're going to have to, as marketers, kind of zig and zag and move all around and really keep the like pulse on that bigger picture, like you mentioned.
Yeah, that's really interesting about the reclassifying of goods. Yeah, that's interesting. Can we talk about that later?
Yeah, yes,
Talk about
absolutely.
that offline.
Yeah, I'll send you some stuff on that too because I thought
Thanks.
it was, yeah, it was very interesting. There was like a post 2008, like 2007, 2008 analysis done in 2012, how people had reclassified. And then as they came out of the recession, it changed kind of back to post recession. And
Yeah.
it's just consumer behavior is so fascinating in this, and you're spot on. We have to like think bigger. It can't just be like trying to get this person to buy this one thing. It's like, how do we expand our ecosystem and the like consumers' knowledge of it?
Yeah, totally.
Both your examples so far, you've the Bell and Nike, you've talked kind of like the brand or the product was this way and it had kind of either lost something or it wasn't quite in the
Mm.
new age. And a lot of like brand storytelling. Tell me a little bit about how you approach, like, okay, you come in to a company, you see like a product, a shoe, a helmet, a something isn't quite hitting the mark, or you see an opportunity. How do you approach a storytelling, specifically since you have that journalism background?
For me, it's always history. It's always looking back at the history of the product or the service
Mhm.
and why was it created? Why was it created? And I think it's very different sort of what I'm doing now because I'm in services, spiritual
Right.
services,
Yeah.
whereas I previously was in like sports products. But with sports products, it's always look at the history. It's always like, why was this product created? Why was it created at that time? And why was it important? So,
Mm,
like with Air Max, why was it created at that time? Why was it important at the time? What was the feeling at the time? And like, what is honest about the Air Max brand? I think looking at the honesty of the brand history is really important in understanding why a product is being created today or why someone would care about it. I think, when it comes to helmets, the helmets we were putting out are new helmets, but it was really important to look at the lineage of the helmet, where it has come from, and understand. I mean, that in itself helps you story tell the technical benefits. Like, hey, this helmet used to basically be a salad bowl, and now it's this.
yeah.
To really story tell like why it's important, why safety is important, where the company has come from, why you should trust the company, why you should trust our products. But then also to really think about like from a bigger positioning standpoint, who is this brand? Like who is the creator of the brand and what did they want to create and why? And sometimes you get away from that and you need a full change, but with brands like Nike and Bell, they need to stay true to their roots because they're very impactful brands that really were at the beginning of their industries. And it's interesting because Keen is like one of the first platforms. A fun fact about Keen is that at one point in our history, we were owned by AT&T because we were a phone line.
Oh, interesting. That's
Yes,
so interesting.
yes. And so I think that can also just sort of put into perspective how lucrative this industry is, probably more than most people would understand. There are a lot of people using these kinds of services, but back to storytelling, always with the idea of history and then always with the idea of like, why would the consumer care? Like, why do
Mhm.
you care? Why does this person care about this? And if there's no reason for the consumer to care and you're not solving a problem, then what are you doing?
Totally. I mean,
Really?
yeah, seriously, all the time. I think about that sometimes when you see like a new product launch and you're like, who put money behind this? Like what is it? Or who is it for? I always think that. I'm like, who did they create this random thing for? Is that
Yeah. And
audience?
sometimes it can be a feature and it's a self-serving feature. I think I've found this of like, did we build this really because we think someone is going to use it, or did we build it because it's self-serving and it checks off a box for us on our back end? I think that's really what you've got to ask yourself. And I think like customer centricity is so important. Um, you really, and I mean, for me at least, it's why I value working in places where I am the customer. If I wouldn't buy the product or use the product, I find it very, very hard to relate. I'm sure there are people that are much better at that than me, but not me.
Totally. I totally agree with that. I think that's the interesting thing too about agency life is like sometimes you have to work on something that you're like, I'm not quite their target
Yeah,
audience. And so it's definitely like a challenge exercise when that comes around.
yeah,
Because I totally agree. So I think this is really interesting because agencies are all services as well. And like looking at how agencies market themselves, I find it jargony and repetitive, like just all the time. It's the same language, the same lingo, and like nobody's actually like saying anything. And so I'm curious, as you kind of are thinking about Keen as, how you guys are messaging that, do you lean into the services itself or like the people behind the services, or is there something that you really resonate with on the services storytelling side?
yeah. We've definitely come from a place where it was very focused on sort of bottom of the funnel immediacy,
Mm.
get guidance now, you know, first reading, 5 minutes, $1. Like very, very bottom of the funnel. I think that and we've started doing this, we're moving to more of a customer centric place of really focusing on less on what Keen can sell you or can give you, and more on what you can get and how that's going to help your journey. So, really being more customer centric, which I think you need to do. You've got to put the customer at the center of the brand. So we've really sort of moved to that, and we're really, really trying to focus on like Keen is your companion to spiritual guidance. We are just the conduit to opening the doors and your mind to all of these services, and these will help you grow and reach the place that you want to be. So really, like Keen is my Sherpa, Keen is my partner, Keen is my companion. These are all the sort of things we talk about in my creative team. And then, yeah, really kind of focused on the customer, focused on where you will be. I think one thing we will be starting to do more is really talk about our advisors. We do a fair bit, but we could definitely do more there. And really sort of focusing on what are their stories? How did they? A lot of them have really special, I'm going to say, senses or abilities. How did they find them? How did they grow them? I think there's a lot of interest there. So that's going to be a really fun stream of work as well.
I was like, that's so I would like, can you do like a podcast or like a series on that? Because I would totally do it. I'm like, ooh, I want to know all of that information. That's so great. I want to talk a little bit about kind of like community mentorship and leadership in the last couple of
Yep.
minutes here. So I think you've held a lot of leadership roles in these kind of male dominated spaces like sports. And you mentioned, with Nike bringing on a, woman inspired or LGBT, team of creative, but can you think of or share a moment where being a woman in the room shaped the outcome of the strategy in a way that it may not have gone had that presence not been there?
When I started at Bell Helmets, I was brought in with a really clear job of like, we need to reposition marketing, we need to reposition the brand, we've gone awry. The motto, so they'd really had an all-male team, all-male leadership. And I think that you can understand that when I tell you what the brand motto that they were going with was. The brand motto was live wide open. And I said, a woman's never going to wear live wide open on a t-shirt. And one of the guys goes, why? And I was like, think about it. So that was pretty obvious.
That's incredible. I mean, I feel like
Yeah.
that's the perfect example of why there needs to be an array of opinions and perspectives in a room to make great decisions. That's hilarious.
It's
Um,
wild, isn't it?
that is wild. Did they end up going with that? Was that a tagline before? Or were they just like ideating on that and you were like, okay, let's look at that from this perspective?
Oh no, this was in effect. This is on ads on the website. I mean, you probably can still find it.
I'm so
Live Wide
Google.
Open was
Yeah.
had been in effect for about 8 years, and I was like, we've got to change that. Like,
Yes. Now.
and I mean, the other part of it was like Live Wide Open. Jokes aside, is a very specific term to motorcycle. It's not really in bike around when you open up on the accelerator and you like wide open, and it's like a motorcycle thing. So again, Bell being a bike and motorcycle brand, picking something that wasn't relevant to everybody across
Mm-hmm.
the product line was silly, completely excluding females from that thought pattern.
Right.
Just like not a great line and really not a clear strategy there. I think it was just chosen because it was like a tough guy line, which is, Bell had gone down this real tough guy angle, and ultimately tough guys don't buy helmets in half the states in the US. So it's not really like a good strategy.
That's also a really good point. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
if I think about like safety and like security, I feel like that is very like mother women led. Like, people are like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
my, not that my dad didn't care about my helmet wearing, but like my mom was always like, grab your helmet, grab your knee pads, like, that type of thing. That's the knowing your audience, understanding the full scope of the consumer, not just
Yes.
the one. Hmm.
I
Yeah.
remember one of the guys on the team was like, yeah, we're going to do an event in Vegas, then we're going to do this event at like Daytona in Florida. And I was like, funny, because both of those are not helmet states. So why, like, unless you're sponsoring the local hospital or we're like sponsoring an ambulance, like, I don't really, like, where are we sending people? How does this affect sales? It's like, it's just a brand moment. And I was like, it's a brand moment for a very small section of people that don't wear helmets in states that don't make you wear a helmet. So, like, no, we're not doing it.
That's honestly though, the ambulance is a top tier idea. That like
Thank
in
you.
that
That was
that
mine.
is great. Yes, yes. I'm like, that
Yeah.
makes sense to me, especially in the non-helmet states for sales. See,
Yeah.
this is why you're good at your job. I love that. So I always like to ask this question for like young women or really, I think anybody in a minority group entering the marketing sphere today or, the world today, what is one thing you wish more people like would lean into or listen to that you wish you would have when you were young?
To be honest, I think it's really changed now. So I think in the last 20 years, I've been working for 20 years, it's really, really different. I think the advice that I would give to young people now is like, know your worth in terms of we're not doing free internships. Like there's got to be something there. And I know that it is a very broken system and that is a really snobbish thing to say in some effects, but I think that there is a lot asked and there is this ridiculous like idea out there that young people don't work hard, which is a dumb thing that I've heard because really let's think about boomers. Like they didn't exactly work that hard. They just got handed everything on a silver platter with like a 1% interest rate. So I'm like, we're not listening to them.
Yes.
The world is really hard right now, really, really hard. So when you go to work, do your 401k. If you have a matching option, I'm going to say straight up at this, I'm going to go like step back from marketing. Do
Yeah.
your 401k. Just do it. Even if you do the most minimal amount. When they have a matching, it is free money from your company. Take that free money, do the minimal amount, because I promise you it's going to matter in the future, because
Yes.
unfortunately the generations before us have really messed things up. I
Mhm.
think then from a marketing perspective for young people, get very into AI. You are only going to succeed and survive as a marketer if you embrace AI. And that is straight up, like, I'm seeing it. It's evident. The fact that marketing teams are getting smaller and smaller and smaller is because of AI. So the best way to save yourself and to really create a career is this idea of like embrace AI.
Mhm.
Start reading about machine to machine learning. I started reading about it today. It's wild. It's like AI bots talking to AI like
Yes.
checkout counters. And it's a thing that we're going to have to start thinking about. So start learning about that. And then if you can learn any sort of engineering or coding type stuff, if you plan on working in digital, and let's face it, digital is kind of where most things go, learn a bit of that because that's going to help you as well. Because marketing these days is like, is it used to be, being like a digital marketer nowadays is what used to be 10 jobs. So do everything that you can to position yourself in a really strong way from the beginning, both financially with your 401k and then educationally to set yourself up to be a strong marketer with like understand a bit about engineering, understand a bit about product, and then get into AI. And I really think that you can still be a creative marketer, but you are going to be expected to use AI tools to work faster, is the thing. So figure out how to game AI to make you better at your job. Biggest advice for anyone out there right now.
I think that's spot on. Spot on. I couldn't have said it better.
Thanks.
That was, I feel like that's a really good one to end on. Actually, one last 2 minute one. What is fueling your personal professional excitement right now?
Oh, yeah. I only started at Keen in December, and we are exploring what the future of Keen might look, feel, and sound like. So, without saying too much, that is super exciting. I think that the space of spiritual journeying is really interesting. I think more people are getting into it. I think the move away from um, facilitated and sort of traditional religion is really fascinating as well. I love the shifts in thinking. I love the critical thinking that we're seeing. So this keeps me really, really excited because I think there's a lot of people out there that haven't tapped into things like having an astrologer, read their cards. I think that all of this is really interesting to a lot of people that don't know about it yet. So the excitement that I have on a day to day for work is really about being able to go out and find those people. And then also we just have like a kick-ass team. I love my team so much. I am so blessed to have such an awesome team that are creative and funny and hardworking. And, across the company, I think we've just got some amazing humans. And it's really nice. It's really nice to be in a female dominated space as well, rather than a male dominated space after so many years.
The whole team over at Chrometrics, like my whole little marketing BD team, where it's all women, female, identifying and
Great.
obsessed. Obsessed with it. It makes every day like
Yeah.
so much better. You're just like hyped, it's fun, it's
Yep.
good energy, but you also like they work so hard. We get so much done. It's incredible. So
Yep.
I totally
And you
agree.
send memes at the same time. And
Yes.
that's the best part of it.
Exactly, exactly.